Hello, hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, thank you for tuning in. Thanks so much. As you probably know, I am speaking with fascinating people in tech here in SaugaTalks studio. We're covering all the way from AI automation to digital transformation to future of work and industry progress, use cases, my personal interest in very practical adoption advices and tips that professionals, practitioners, leaders, or just tech enthusiasts, all right, learn from us. So I'm absolutely privileged today because Isaac Sacolick with me today. Isaac, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. You are an enormously recognized leader in digital transformation space. You are an author, you are a CEO, and the topic is going to be, surprise, surprise, digital transformation. All right. For now, my impression, because bubble I'm in, all the feed I'm getting, all the articles I'm reading, right? Reading rather, and hosting lots of influencers and leaders here tells me that digital transformation is almost like a cliche right now. Okay, it's not the new news, and yet I want to know your opinion. Where do we stand with understanding, with implementation, with challenges, and with the future of digital transformation today?
Well, I mean, every organization needs to look into their past and into their future and realize that, technology is having a tremendous impact on how they're serving customers, what markets they want to be in, how they're using technology, data, analytics, AI to competitive advantages. And if you look back 3 to 5 years from now, from 3 to 5 years ago, and you looked at what types of things we were working on and how we were operating, this was now pre-pandemic. We're very different companies now. The ones that invested in applied technologies, used it toward real advantages in working with customers and internally in terms of their operations, but look very different than they were 5 years ago, based on all of the impacts of the pandemic and all the impacts of new technologies. And so when you look 5 years from now, we're going to have the same thing again, right? We have generative AI today, which is really, at the forefront of digital transformation efforts. That's constantly evolving. That's not done. So you're not implementing an LLM and saying, I'm done with this technology. We're going to continue to evolve with it. And in 2 years' time, there'll be some more technologies that will be impactful that we'll have to go transform again. We'll have different ways we want to work with employees and with partners. We'll have to transform again. We'll have to think about what's happening in our industry and how those are impacted. If I'm in manufacturing, if I don't have a digital twin today, I'm probably going to have a digital twin in 3 to 5 years' time. Somewhere in that horizon, I think every manufacturing company is going to have a digital twin. I think healthcare is going to change dramatically over the next 3 to 5 years because of the impacts of technology. And I think also look at higher education, right? 5 years ago, we were transforming our way of studying and teaching because kids knew how to do searches on the internet. Now we're transforming it again because kids know how to use ChatGPT to solve their problems. We're going to continuously transform. So, maybe the term has gotten watered down a little bit. I think one of the issues is that we call every time we implement a technology a transformation. Well, that's just not the case, right? There's a lot of technologies that we're using that are just transitioning. They're making us a little bit more efficient. They're helping us move off of a legacy system. But to be truly transformational, I say it has to do two things. It has to change our operating model, and it has to have growth to it, right? We have to be able to grow revenue, grow customers from the technologies we're implementing. Those two things together enable us to change our business model. And that's really what digital transformation is all about.
I love how you phrased it. That opened up my eyes on this, despite of information overload on the topic. Okay, what I got from here is the evolutionary role that technology plays, driving businesses, driving people to make better decisions. And you're absolutely right. We cannot just use cliche words on everything we see around us. it just wears off. It just wears off. And, it comes, backlash comes, right? How everybody was excited about it, I don't know, 7 years ago. And now digital, it doesn't cut it anymore. You're absolutely right. So the new technology, let's talk about that a little bit. All right. Gen AI, we are all tried it. We see it. We are amazed by it. I'm speaking for myself here, right? What about the businesses? What about business leaders, companies who have budgets, who have responsibilities, and their immediate needs? What's the kind of mood out there in terms of, is it great? Is it let's wait and see? Is it fear of missing out? What do you see out there?
Yes, to all of that. I mean, there's a few dynamics that are playing out. The CEOs and boards are hearing Gen AI, they're seeing Gen AI, they're seeing the growth from big technology companies around it, and it's easy to get wowed by it. So they're getting wowed by it, and they're coming back to their CIOs and sometimes their chief data officers and digital officers and saying, what's our strategy? What's our gameplay here? We better not be left behind, right? And at the same time, unlike any other capability that's come out in the last 10 years, our employees are really excited by this. Some are fearful by it, but they all want to try, whether it's, a co-pilot or it's, being able to generate code or be able to generate content or being able to summarize content. We're all trying these things because we're sort of excited by it. We're also somewhat fearful about it. How is our jobs changing with this? And so sitting in the middle of all this is this question of, how are we using this to real business value? Where are we getting productivity out of it? Where are we getting beyond productivity? It's a blog post I wrote this week, right? We cannot just transform from productivity alone. Productivity makes us more efficient at things that we're doing today. So it can enable transformation when we find time that's freed up and we really apply it towards something transformational beyond that. We have not found Gen AI getting us to the point where we're changing our business models yet. It's coming. You could see it in pharmaceutical as an example. In pharma, being able to accelerate drug discovery or improve the time to bring drugs to market is going to change their approach in terms of how many drugs they're funding, the cost that goes into it, how much marketing they put into drug discovery. So that's a big area where you're going to see a lot of change because of this. I mentioned digital twins. I mean, a big part in manufacturing around digital twins is being able to educate people working on the shop floor. Now take Gen AI as a new tool to ask questions, and then in 3 or 4 years, augment it with artificial, with AR and VR technologies, right? Being able to see and talk and get answers on the shop floor in terms of what a digital twin is saying relative to what's happening on the shop floor. So number one thing is, I think every C-level needs a strategy, right? Just opening up the door up and saying anybody can use this technology for anything is going to create a lot of wasted effort in areas that aren't important. We got to find places where we want people to experiment. We need some governance in terms of how we're using different tools, how we're storing and learning from the prompts that we're using, and how to use our data in a way, not losing IP, not sharing sensitive information. So all that needs to go into a governance model. And, the CIOs that I know, they've been working on this for quite a bit. They have to keep up with changing capabilities. But the most important thing I'm telling CIOs is see it right in my blog post this week at blogs.starcio.com. I say, look, if we want this to be transformational, we need to look beyond the immediate productivity benefits that we're seeing from the technology.
Let's talk about problems. Okay, that's my favorite segment of the show. Problems that AI and Gen AI are helping leaders to solve right now.
Well, I think right now, let's just take a couple of domains, right? There's a domain of, let's collaborate more efficiently, right? And Gen AI is helping that very simply with summarizations that can become part of an overall knowledge base. Hugely important because that means I don't need 100 people on a Zoom call anymore. I need the 10 people who are going to be influencing and making a decision around what's being discussed. And then I'm going to use a summarization feature, and many of them have this, to be able to share that information with everybody. There's a good number of people in an organization in marketing, beyond marketing and technology, that have to create a lot of content as part of their job. I do it. I use ChatGPT to create a lot of elements of my content. I'm writing all my articles. I'm writing all my video. I'm not using it to outsource Isaac, but I'm getting a lot of help on things like titles. I'm getting help on cleaning up some of the language around things. So there's a lot of places where it's augmenting content creation, not necessarily just slamming out a lot of poorly written content that anybody can actually go do. We're seeing in coding also. I think we're only seeing the basics of coding. I spent this week experimenting with code generators, and I was shocked. With a few simple prompts, it was giving me really good code that I put into production. I rarely do coding, but when it ran into problems, it could not debug its own code, and it could not fix all of its code even after I had debugged it and reprompted it. So it's not going to do that for a long time until we start marrying in the ability to do analysis off of the results. There isn't a feedback loop other than prompting back into the engine. But if you look at the most universal thing that it can't do is it can't ask questions. Okay, it can't decide what's really important for the business, right? That's really going to be a couple of the key skill sets that leaders, people I call digital trailblazers after my book, I say, look, you got to be able to know how to ask the right questions, evaluate answers, evaluate what a Gen AI is telling you, and make sure you're focused on solving the right problems in the right way. And that's a skill set that you can apply in any industry that's becoming far more important today than the ability to solve problems, right? We have a lot of tools now to solve problems, right? I have skills I can bring in. I have partners I can bring in. A lot of technologies are low and no code oriented, so I can use those to simplify. And now I got Gen AI doing a lot of the work for me, but it doesn't know what problems to go solve for. That's my job.
Exactly. That goes hand in hand with decision making, because you make a decision, right? As a creator, let's use this example, right? I use ChatGPT for, smoothing some of the titles, for helping me to sort of form, the videos that I end up sharing. All right. Yes, there is some help there, but at the same time, decision making. So what's your process and what's your advice to the leaders, to the practitioners who are...
Well, let's first talk about automated decision making, right? This ability for an ML and AI to basically come to a conclusion and then connect it directly to an automation that goes actions it for us. In the past couple of weeks, we've learned how important it is to have really good analysis before we automate large-scale decisions. I mean, we saw a company push out a patch that looked quite, simple for them. I don't know what their testing procedures are, but it took down, banks, it took down airlines. This isn't the first time that automation has led us astray. I mean, if you go back to the early robo traders that, could sense the way the world was working in a typical day, in a typical week, but as soon as there was outliers, the market's changing dramatically. There's a stepwise function. The robo traders were going off and making the wrong decisions. So we need to get a lot better about anything that's around automated decisions, because it looks like very simple things can lead to catastrophic results. And that's why you're hearing a lot of people say, look, continue to augment people in their ability to make decisions. Most of the time, there's just too little time and too much information to make a great decision. And so we do a lot of things to give context. If I'm a customer support rep, right, give me the entire representation. Isaac is technical. He's a CIO. He's an influencer. He's opening up a ticket in a SaaS solution. He's probably done the basics already. He's probably restarted his computer and restarted his browser. Maybe we want to send that person to level 2 immediately because he's a big spender, influencer, and technologist. I have yet to see a customer service application do anything like that yet. But when that customer support person gets that call, you want to provide them tremendous context so that they provide the right information at the right time to the right people. There's a tremendous opportunity there for companies to get better at that. And in some cases, yes, I want to be able to automate and provide upfront information so people can self-serve. I'd like that. Whenever I can self-serve it as an answer, it's often better than me talking to a person. But I think today's world is really focused on help people make faster and smarter decisions and get better at making decisions in an automated way that are low scale, small scale, that have really good feedback loops, and then continue to expand around that as you get better at it. You started by saying like digital transformation, what's different, what's changed. I mean, we still need to go back to many of the disciplines we always used to do. We have to be able to test things. Okay, now we needed to be able to test things at scale with large numbers of permutations. We used to worry about, 5 different browsers on 2 different devices. Now there's APIs, there's hundreds of use cases, there's dozens of phones and OS systems out there. We have to get better at automating our tests, but we can't get rid of testing, right? We have to get better at deploying our code. We've always had to deploy code. It used to be spreadsheets and long sets of steps. Then we put out CI/CD. Now we talk about, and this has been going on for a while, how do we get rid of the change advisory board, a people group, to decide whether something is deployable and be able to take all the factors in and automate our ability to do decisions. And, I don't want to second guess what happened over here. I'm looking forward to the full root cause around it. But the reality is that we're still practicing the same disciplines in our field, in our ability to do transformation. We just are using technology a lot more to our advantage. And that's what I see with automation. That's what I see with machine learning. That's what I see with Gen AI. When you put those 3 things together, we're helping people scale to a world that has just tremendous amount of information where we have to do things in much faster times. And that's what we're trying to do here. Maybe the other dimension is also just dealing with skill. In a lot of industries, we don't have the luxury of having subject matter expertise around indefinitely. People leave their jobs. People have been in certain industries like construction for long periods of time. They know how to do the intuitive way of laying out cement, or how to hang drywall, and all that kind of stuff is lost as we bring in new generations of people that can be part of an entire decision and automation framework that goes into what we're doing. We just can't leave out the learnings that we've done in the past.
You kind of touched on my next topic here, Isaac, how to balance, this AI promising innovation, all right, with practical task in hand, with business as usual, with actually supporting customers, supporting the world. So you sort of answered with testing, no shortcuts, right? No magic bullets there. But
no, I did an article for InfoWorld about 4 or 6 weeks ago, and it was, I didn't know the answer to it. I wanted to know how to test an LLM. And so I went asking people, how, you're putting RAGs, you're doing large language models, it does something. How are you actually validating its accuracy? How do you validate against hallucinations? How do you validate against, bad input or bad output? And the number 1 answer that came back was brute force. And the number 2 answer came back to being able to run tests at brute force and do semantic answer analysis off of the answer, right? In a traditional QA test, right, you're trying to compare known results. Well, if I ask an LLM the same question 5 times, I'm going to get 5 different strings of answer that I can't do a string comparison on. Right? They may mean the same thing, but the LLM is giving me a different answer. So now I have to do a semantic understanding of the output and say, yeah, it's actually saying the same thing. And then, the next generation is actually putting in adversarial networks to be able to compete and say whether or not an answer is actually accurate compared to other answers that it's seen in the past. So we're still learning how to do testing around this. I think it's one of the more important things that that organizations that are building these capabilities out need to consider, because we do a really good job of building capabilities, we do a miserable job of testing it, and we do an awful job of supporting and enhancing what we've built. That's always been universal in how we've evolved technologies because of the cost involved with it. And so, we'll see how it goes. I think we're going to get better at it. I do think you brought up innovation and creativity. I think we're a little ways off from that. I'm a little bit more, I would say, pessimistic about a Gen AI being able to do this, but I've been wrong before. I have a blog post you can go dig out that said that AI would never be able to learn to code, and obviously got that one completely wrong. But the reality is, it's not really learning how to code, right? It's learning how to answer a question and pattern match off of an existing code base, right? Of its learning that it's gotten analysis on. So I'll make a semantic argument. It's not actually coding; it's actually extrapolating the code that you want.
This is fun. And you know what? We still want those predictions, okay? No matter how accurate past predictions were, maybe not, but you know what? This is intellectual exercise, just kind of based on our experiences, our intuition. What do we know as of today, okay? So we're not going to hold you accountable, somewhat, we will. Yeah. Where do you see, you mentioned in 5 years, I'm sure we're going to be talking about different topics and probably, right, dismissing all the worries of today, hopefully, right? So where do you see we're going to be, I don't know, next year, 5 years from now, like from the trends that you see in front of our eyes?
Well, I will tell you two parts to that answer. I mean, the first part, I think, is you're seeing AI just being used, I would say, largely tactically, right? Take something that we already do today or that we would like to do, but maybe we don't have the skill sets to do it, and using a Gen AI to replace those steps. There's a great book out there called, I think it's called Prediction Analytics. It's AJ. I'll send you the link after so that you can put it in the video. But he does a great job of saying, look, when we have a truly transformation technology, it takes organizations time to rethink the new world with that technology in place from an infrastructure level. We saw the good example of this is mobile, right? A lot of what we did when the first phones came out, we started building mobile interfaces, is we took what we were doing online on the web and rebuilt those interfaces for the mobile, and it really wasn't transformational until things like the App Store came out and we started building mobile specific workflows and thinking about location and time as new dimensions that we could work with, bringing in a camera capability, bringing in other sensor capability. And then once we start putting that all together and saying, what can we do differently that we never could do before? Well, I could order an Uber. I couldn't do that before without a mobile phone. So we're not at that point with Gen AI where we've totally rethought the experience, rethought the business model with Gen AI as an available capability and say, what are people going to be doing differently now that this capability is becoming almost commodity-like? We just haven't seen that just yet. I think the other part that we will see probably a little bit closer to that is the intersection of Gen AI with other sensory input. So voice into a generative AI input, right? Alexa that actually works, right? And has generative AI behind it. I mentioned AR and VR experiences. Now think AR, VR experiences connected to generative AI, connected to a digital twin. Right now, we're really getting into some interesting areas where we can have a conversation, see things, feel things, and even test things with our digital twins out there. So we haven't seen the intersection of Gen AI with these other capabilities and layering on application on top of that. We're going to see it first with voice. We're going to see it next with vision. We'll probably see it after that with AR and VR experiences. I don't know if reinventing the platforms that we all run our business off of will become before that, during, or after. My sense is it'll be all three, depending on the industry. But that's what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years, is that convergence and maturity of Gen AI with all the sensory input capabilities on top of it. How's
Absolutely
that?
Fascinating. So this is the time in the show. I encourage everyone to follow Isaac. I'm a huge fan on LinkedIn and on his own blog. Where to find the blog, Isaac?
Blog is blogs.starcio.com. We're actually in the process of redesigning it. It's going to have a whole new look to it. It hasn't been quite launched yet. Obviously, there'll be some redirects there. But that blog has over 600 posts on it. That goes back all the way to 2005. And you can go to my website, starcio.com/driving. I think that's the right URL. And that will sign you up. Look for the URL to sign up for the newsletter. That gets you access to all my writing. I also write for CIO, for InfoWorld. I do 1 to 2 videos a month that go out there. I have almost 80 videos. And then I have a coffee hour on LinkedIn. Easiest way to get to that is starcio.com/coffee/next-event. That redirects to the next event. And we're always talking about digital transformation, the impact of digital trailblazers. Those are people who are leading transformation efforts. And if you're feeling lost in this world about how to lead transformation efforts, take a look at my book. It's 2 years old now. It's still selling very well. It's really a guidebook for transformation leaders, and it's all stories. Okay, I leave 50 lessons learned across all the chapters, but you're sitting next to me through board meetings, through product meetings, through outages, through trying to make sense out of data, through working through diversity issues, every single thing that comes up during a transformation leader's journey. And I tell those stories in the book.
Fantastic, fantastic. We'll include the links. We'll include the links in these videos. Absolutely. Isaac, thank you so very much for your time today. We're not done yet, all right? I want to ask you this question about AI investments. Okay, not everyone is investor, but everyone is affected by how those investments made right now, and how skeptical we should be about whole AI bubble. Just to bring some drama to the show, AI bubble, I insist. How, again, leaders, those with budgets, those with people, those with responsibilities, have to think about it now, because it seems like it's a low-hanging fruit. I have AI in my platform. I'm golden. So what do you think is happening out there? AI investments, are we close to that bubble burst?
Well, I don't know if we're close to the bubble bursting, but I think we are in a bubble. I'll say that. It feels very much like 2000 to me. Just watching just skyrocketing expectations and valuation time. If anything, it's probably worse than 2000 because everybody lives and breathes and sees AI every day. Whereas the internet was pretty small back in 2000, limited audience who were seeing it and limited ability to do trading around it. I mean, I think the more interesting thing, if you're an investor, is look a couple of, places that are most likely to take benefits from AI capabilities sooner rather than later, right? Which industries and which companies are showing capabilities that they know how to take advantage of emerging technologies, where they have the most to gain from emerging technologies. And so a couple of areas that that I think are really interesting. I think there's pockets of manufacturing that has demonstrated the ability to use IoT, for example, in their manufacturing process. I think they're going to show early value in being able to use AI. I'm tremendously interested in healthcare and pharma in this space. Again, lots of data, lots of inefficiencies, maybe historically behind the curve in using data and technology, but lots of opportunity here. So maybe not as an industry, but you're going to find pockets of companies who have historically shown the ability to take advantage of emerging technologies, data, analytics, and now Gen AI is just the next thing that they're going to work on. So those are the couple things that I look at. I mean, I think, when you look at technology companies, it's very hard to get a good read on it. As there's good funds that you could go manage that would probably be good bets. I do think also that, the energy sector is going to have to deal with us consuming that much more power, even though the chips are getting more efficient and even though the algorithms are getting more efficient, we're relying more and more power to power everything that we're doing. And so the energy sector's got to transform. It has to help us build to meet the current demand. And so I think that's an interesting sector that will have impacts because of what we're doing with AI.
In conclusion, Isaac, thank you so very much again for your time. Conclusion, could you please provide maybe a few takeaways based on what we discussed, all the way from shiny future to some hurdles that companies and leaders have to solve today?
Well, I'm going to go right back to leadership. I think that if I talk to any CIO and I ask them, do you have enough people to manage all the transformation that you're trying to do, all the upgrade and legacy systems that you need to move forward on? Are you managing all your stakeholders with their needs? And, there's some companies that are obviously limited by culture. There's some companies that are limited by funding. But the most universal area that we're limited is the number of leaders in our organization who understand our business, who understand technology capability, and can run transformation programs for us. All right, so I think, what's gotten easier over the last few years is solutioning. As I said earlier, what's gotten harder is what problems are we solving for and how do we drive impact and how do we drive change around it. I said this in the book, Digital Trailblazer, a couple of years ago. We're always going to be transforming, number one, and every organization is going to need more leaders who have the ability to lead digital transformation initiatives. Those people I call digital trailblazers, and I think it's tremendously important wherever you are in your career, whatever skill sets you have, the ability to understand left and right of your discipline, become more broader so that you know what problems to seek for, what questions to ask, and get more versatile in the types of solutions that are applicable. You're going to do very well over the next 10 years if you're able to do that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Isaac, so very much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Happening out there
At the same time.